Hi there guys, welcome to my fifth vlog on agility. So the drill I chose to perform was quite a simple 3-cone agility drill, where initially I would be accelerating out to the first cone, decelerating, there will be a change of direction onto the second cone, another change of direction, and finally accelerating back to the beginning. I think the most interesting thing for my first attempt is the movement strategy I utilise. So as you can see from my initial acceleration, I accelerate quite hard into that first corner, decelerate quite aggressively. I then use a cross step to change direction and accelerate to the next cone, where I then decelerate again quite aggressively and use a drop step to accelerate to the final cone. So on my repeated attempt, I was able to complete the course much quicker, and I think the main difference came in how I negotiated the cones. So as you can see, what I'm able to do is maintain much more speed going into the first corner and the second corner, and the movement strategies totally changed. So if you remember from my initial attempt, my strategy was accelerate hard, decelerate, accelerate hard, decelerate, and then accelerate. Whereas here, I'm able to genuinely accelerate throughout the whole course, and I'm not having to decelerate as much, so I'm not losing as much speed, and there's less drastic changes of direction required. So from a deterministic point of view, from when I initially performed this skill, it was quite obvious that I needed to improve my speed around the turns for myself to perform the drill quicker. The first thing I changed was trajectory. So as you can see, I approach the drill at a much wider angle and also exit the turn at a much wider angle. From this, I'm able to retain more speed both in and out of the turn due to less drastic changes of direction. The second thing I changed was as I was approaching the cones with a different trajectory, I was able to utilize a different movement strategy. So through the first cone, as I adjusted my balance and trajectory through the turn, I was able to use more of a curved running strategy. And through the second cone, although there was a deceleration required, I was able to use more of a cross step technique, where I retained more speed. Because I was able to put myself in a position where I was able to re-accelerate earlier. One very interesting observation I made, and is unfortunately an attempt I didn't record, was that I only changed my technique on the second cone, that is, going from a drop step to a cross step, when I had to race and against an opponent. It was only then, under that pressure and under those different constraints, that I chose to use a cross step technique rather than a drop step. For me as a coach, then, I think for the future, this drill and this exercise just showed me how powerful the nervous system and the feedback receptors and sensors are in terms of refining movement. And as a coach, I think the input that we can provide is limited in terms of explicit instructions or explicit directions as to how an individual should move. And rather than that, it really is about putting the athlete in an environment where they can discover the movement for themselves. And if we do recognize a movement error, rather than us telling the athlete what to do, we should be facilitating the athlete to discover the most efficient movement strategy for themselves. So with that being said, I would change one main thing. And that is that in coaching this drill, the main thing I'm looking to influence is the trajectory taken by the athlete round the two cones. So with that in mind, I'd be looking to change the constraints of the task so that the athlete is more encouraged to use this sort of strategy. So, for example, like I did with racing against an opponent, or where they're having to race against the clock. And I think the changes in the task constraints will encourage the athlete to find the most efficient trajectory to complete the task as quickly as possible.